Well, welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with my good friend, Acting Chief Immigration Officer, Mrs. Geraldine Ritter Freeman. It's good to see you, my sister. How are you doing?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Cromwell, as usual. I'm so glad that I can be back in 2017.
Yes, indeed. You're looking fresh and ever.
Thank you.
Yes, good to see you. Well, last time you were here, we were talking about the changes in the immigration regulations, and you're going to update us on that. You're going to talk to us about when the changes came into effect, what the changes are, and what the goal of the changes are.
But first, let me say thank you again for the opportunity. And I know in the essence of time, I want to do this very quickly, but I also want to do it very efficiently to make sure that I'm clear but concise in terms of where we are and where we're going. With regards to the change of jobs, change of status policy that went into effect on September 1st, 2016, it is very it's going as planned, and I'm very satisfied with what has taken place so far. You would recall, Cromwell, that the change of status, change of jobs policies allowed persons who were living in the Virgin Islands for 5 years or more, and they were changing their jobs, to remain in the territory under conditional permit that cost $250. Okay, as well as persons who were living in the territory for 3 years or more and were changing their status for a conditional permit of $250, they too can remain and go through that process. Tonight, I'm happy to report that many persons have utilized the initiative, and the government has been able to collect quite some revenue from that initiative. And so, by all means, it's a great success. The one thing I do want to remind the public about with regards to the conditional permit, the $250 conditional permit that you pay for, it is for 90 days. What we're finding is since September, the 90 days have since expired for some persons, and persons are now coming back to the department seeking extensions. It is very important that tonight I emphasize the fact that the conditional permit is for 90 days. You have 90 days of which to seek employment, and it's very important that you try to utilize those 90 days to do so.
And beyond the 90 days, you're breaking the law.
Beyond the 90 days, it's going to be very difficult for us moving forward to be able to facilitate any time beyond that.
Well, there are penalties for going beyond the 90 days?
There are no penalties. We'll just have to ask you to exit and come back as you would have
originally.
Originally, yes.
So that's almost like a penalty.
Yes.
So you forfeit the right to stay.
Exactly.
If you break the 90-day rule.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's important to know. Who are the people that are allowed to stay for 3 years without employment?
I think that is a misunderstanding with regards to what I just described. The 3-year requirement for people changing their status. So you have persons coming into the territory as dependents, right? And they're here to reside with their spouse. They decide at some point they want to work. It means then that now they have to change their status from residing to seeking employment. The conditional permit speaks to those people who have been here for 3 years or more, means that they can remain in the territory while seeking employment. For some reason, it has been
being supported by their spouse.
Yes, but what we're saying is those individuals are now changing their status.
Yes.
And they can now, if they've been in the territory for 3 years, they can remain in the territory and do so. But somehow it's being misinterpreted that you can't work. You have to have been here for 3 years in order to work. No, you can, if you're here under the 3 years, you can still work. You just have to exit and come back in on a labor clearance and go through that process. The conditional permit only allows you to stay in the territory while you're undergoing that process. It doesn't say that you can't work.
Okay, so you could change your status anytime.
You can change your status.
But you go through the regular process.
Exactly.
This is a benefit to those persons who've been here for a longer period.
Yes, and they can stay. So we just want to make sure that people understand that. It's not that you can't
I think
work.
that needs to be clear.
Yes, so we've been able to clear that. And like I said, we've really been making some good strides with that.
What about children? Forgive me for interrupting, but what about children? Because those are spouses, and I suspect that sometimes children come with their their spouse, with the father or mother as well.
Correct.
And they need education, for example. How does that process work? I think a lot of people are interested in that particular thing because I always get complaints about from expatriates who have children and trying to get them into public school.
So there's a process to get children into school, as you know, which is removed from the policy that we just spoke about.
Okay, so that's a separate procedure.
That's a separate process. But with regards to the policy that we're speaking about, the same applies for any dependent. So if you're here with your children, when you come into the territory to work, you are told exactly what the process is. So one thing that persons need to understand as well, Cromwell, I think is very critical. If you don't remember anything that I say, you remember this. Once you come into the territory under a specific condition or to work, you are given an entry permit. If you lose your job via termination, resignation, whatever, your entry permit automatically becomes null and void.
And you have to leave.
You have to be able to regularize your status, okay? That it means whatever your next step is, you need to do that. You need to notify the immigration department immediately because your entry permit has now become null and void, which means if you haven't lived in the territory for 5 years, you really should be exiting the territory.
And you're here illegally.
Correct.
And you're subject to arrest and
all the other things.
all other things.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the change of status, change of jobs, policy change that went into effect on September 1st. And you would recall we also had the BVI exemption, the BVI visa exemption program,
Yes.
which allowed persons with US, UK, and Canada visas to visit the territory. It's very important tonight that I emphasize visit. We still have persons coming to the territory to work
on their visa.
on the US, UK, Canada visa, and we have to tell them, unfortunately, at the port, that that's not the purpose or the intent of the program. It's for persons visiting the territory. With that said, we've had a lot of persons visit the territory on this new program. And so I think that is going as planned, and I think that persons will be pleased to know that that initiative is going exactly as it is intended to. We're even looking perhaps now at considering how we can capitalize on this program in other ways that we hadn't considered before. So
Could you give us examples of
I'm
the
just
plans?
right now persons who are coming in on the US, UK, and Canada visa are coming in for free, essentially. And you know, government would have been losing revenue because there's a cost for a BVI visa.
Okay.
So we're revisiting those
I see
approaches
what it
and
is.
seeing how we can further amend and facilitate persons.
How are we getting that information out internationally? I mean,
Through the
to
tourist
embassies,
board,
or-
through the financial services. We're using all of the different government agencies to push that information. Even in the financial services space, we send out the information to them and they make sure that persons get it. I mean, just generally, business visitors can come to the territory and have a business meeting and visit, not work, but visit. And so it's in everyone's best interest that they inform the regional and international public about what this particular program. But it's not for a lack of knowing because we've had hundreds of persons come into the territory from September on this program.
Okay, so it's widely known.
Yes, yes.
The changes are widely known.
Yes.
Okay, so that's your update for now.
Yes.
What anything else immigration has been looking at? We've been concerned, for example, for a long time with population growth. Or I should say population management, where Virgin Islanders are beginning concerned. You know, there's a lot of numbers being thrown around. We are 35% of the population. We are 40% of the population. We are 45% of the population. We never seem to get those figures right. We never seem to have empirical statistics.
Correct.
Is the Immigration Department looking at population management, how many people are going to be coming in for a period of time, what that means in terms of employment for Virgin Islanders, because we also complain about loss of jobs.
Correct.
And so on. So there's a lot of issues around population movement and economic growth and development of the territory.
Sure.
Any policies coming down regarding those issues?
Well, certainly, Cromwell, I can emphasize what the role of the department is, but certainly you would recognize policy comes from a higher level, and we are always open to what those changes and ideas may be coming from a higher level. But certainly, as the acting chief immigration officer, I recognize the need for the statistics that you referenced earlier, and we are doing our best to make sure that that is very high on our list of priorities, to make sure that we have the statistics that would support policy making. And since I've taken up the appointment some 7 months ago, in my annual report for 2016, it is my intention to make sure that those statistics are clear and that persons have the necessary information with regards to what has been taking place in the territory, at least for the past 3-4 years, with regards to population growth and management. There are 3 things that I hope to focus on as the acting chief immigration officer. That's efficiency, education, and enforcement. I'll repeat them: efficiency, education, and enforcement. It's important that as a department we continue to look at our policies and our processes, and that we be effective in the way that we do those policies. Since I've been there, we've been doing quite a bit of reviewing where we are, because you know that's important in any strategic plan that one have. You have to assess before you implement, and so we are now assessing where we are as a department, and then our aim and our desire is to work along with the BVI Forward initiative and other initiatives that are out there to bring efficiency to the department. And so the statistics that we're gathering, we do that now on a quarterly basis, where all of the ports of entry report on the numbers, who's coming, how many people are coming to work, how many people are coming to visit, how many people are coming for whatever reason they're coming, and we're making sure that the decision makers have that information. So that's the role that I intend to play in getting us closer to the issue of rectifying the issue of population management. But certainly you can appreciate that is from that's
yes,
a wider,
that would have
a wider
to come from the
discussion,
ministry.
and the decision makers has to guide the department on what they would like going forward.
So what can you tell us about population growth since you've taken place? Have we seen a significant increase in people coming to the territory, looking for not just to visit, but looking to work?
Yeah. Well, one of the things
because that would speak to how the economy is growing. If more people are coming looking for jobs.
Well, we have to be able to make the links. So when we do things like, for example, the visa exemption program. That programs like that will tend to attract persons to the territory, and certainly, as I've said to you, hundreds have taken advantage of that.
Visitors.
Visitors.
Yes.
Those are visitors.
So that serves the interest of tourism,
Correct.
which is fine.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you would also recognize with the BVI Forward initiative, we're also doing a lot to facilitate entry into the territory. Now, that is twofold, which I think the public needs to appreciate and understand. When we begin to look at facilitating entry, or relaxing our entry requirements for the purpose of attracting, competing, and sustaining our respective industries, tourism, financial service, et cetera, we have to also make sure that once we do that, that we also look at our infrastructure and our ability to enforce and secure our borders. And that is a very critical part that I'm keen as the acting chief immigration officer to make sure that there's a balance. So right now we're looking at facilitating entry, and with these things we'll bring more persons to the territory to work and all of that. So we continue to see an increase. There's no doubt we continue to see an increase and an influx of persons coming to the territory. I can't give you numbers and statistics as we speak now, but I promise you that in a few months' time we will be able to do that. Once our annual report is completed and it's laid on the table, you'll be able for yourself to see what those numbers look like. But hopefully you'll have me back and we can have a discussion about numbers and where we're going as a country. But without a doubt, we continue to see an increase of persons coming to the territory.
Okay. And you spoke about efficiencies. In the last meeting here, we were talking about streamlining processes, making the processes easier, making them more cost-effective, reducing stress levels in terms of getting, the processes done, whether it was employers or visitors or employees? How is that coming? How are you managing that, and how are you advancing in terms of efficiency?
So for the latter part of last year and the beginning of this year, the Immigration and Labor Department has been working very closely with the Financial Services Implementation Unit as part of the whole BVI Forward initiative to try to streamline processes. A lot of the emphasis so far has been working with the Labor Department, and if you're staying abreast of what's happening, they would have, right now, I think they're in the process of launching a pilot with their renewal process and these things. But we are certainly in that discussion, but a lot of focus has been trying to get the labor process streamlined and then the immigration process, because we facilitate entry from labor. So once those processes are intact, then the facilitation becomes easier. So we're looking at things, for example, reviewing our medical form. We have a draft, reviewing that form, because a lot of the requirements on the form were outdated, and a lot of the tests that we're asking people to take, it was unreasonable, no longer needed. So we've since reviewed the medical form. We've looking at perhaps giving the police certificate earlier on in the process, perhaps up at the labor end, when persons are actually putting submitting applications. We'll be asking for police records at the beginning as opposed to at the end of the process, which you go through this whole process and then you find out someone has a conviction and they can't come. So we're trying to really look at it after a number of years of doing it a particular way. We want to take a fresh look at it and see how we can streamline. We want to shorten lines. We want to look at things as multi-year work permits, where persons perhaps they have to come into the department every year. I mean, we see hundreds of people. I myself was kind of taken aback with the amount of persons that we see at the Immigration Department on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, hundreds.
And I feel for those people, because I was an immigrant at one point and in New York City. And this waiting, the anxiety of getting the documents fulfilled and sitting all day long waiting to be called with hundreds of people. To me, it's inhumane. And I was wondering how you were managing that, and I know that was one of the things that concerned you as well.
Say one, say two, I go back and I want to emphasize, and it's not a matter of complaining or anything like that, because sometimes we find ourselves, now it seems everybody's complaining, we need this, we need that, we need this. As the Acting Chief Immigration Officer, I'm doing my utmost best to do what I can with what I have, the resources that we have, the finances that we have. We know what the situation is in terms of the economy and so forth. So it's imperative that heads of departments try to be innovative and creative and think outside the box, look at best practices elsewhere, but try still to be creative. But I must say, Cromwell, like many other departments, we too are having issues, because again, once you start to speak about facilitating in order to sustain specific industries, we have to look at our infrastructure. We have to look at the foundational issues that we're struggling with, that we've been struggling with as a department. I'm talking about technology, getting up to speed with cutting edge technology at the ports of entry, making sure that our systems are aligned so that they can speak to each other, and that the immigration system can speak to the labor system. All of these things that are being proposed is not for lack of knowing. We know what is needed. We know where other islands in the Caribbean are. We know where the U.S. and the we know what is out there. It's not for lack of knowing. But we can trump up all of these ideas and these dreams. But if we don't have that foundation and we don't have the infrastructure in place
and the
resources, we're going to have the challenges. We're going to have a challenge, because you're going to open up the borders and you're going to allow more people to come in, and we're not going to be able to monitor them. We're not going to be able to control them. We're not going to be able to manage the situation. And so these are things that we're keen on making sure that when we do make changes, that we look at it holistically. And I'm always leery when people compare, they do it in St. Martin and they do this in Anguilla and they do this, but we cannot afford to just look arrive at someone's port and start looking around and say, well, why don't we have that and why don't we have that? We have to look at the bigger picture. And so I have learned quite a bit since I've been in the department. I have a greater appreciation of the challenges as well as of our role and the importance that the department has in terms of border security for the territory, even with all that's taking place in the United States with immigration and all of that. I'm very fortunate to be here at this time for this season and to be able to make changes on the ground and to be a part of what is taking place. But it's a lot. Immigration is a big topic. We need more time, Cromwell, to talk about immigration. There are a number of issues that we need to address in immigration. Immigration is a law enforcement agency. I need to say that before I leave. We are a law enforcement agency, and we too have needs in order for us to achieve our objectives.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about Trumpism going around, and I was wondering how does that affect us? How does Trump immigration ideas and philosophy affect the BVI? Does it affect it at all, or is it just some beef he has with Mexico that he's dealing with, but really we are sort of on the outside of that? Can we say comfortably that U.S. immigration policy is not going to have a major impact on us, whether socially or economically?
Well, firstly, let me say I don't have any data to support anything at this stage with regards to the impact of Trumpism, as you have alluded to. But I do believe that we will have some kind of impact from what is taking place in the United States. And we've already started to strengthen our relationships with our regional partners, local partners. We've begun to have more meetings with our local law enforcement agencies, customs and police and so forth. And we believe that these relationships are important so that we begin to speak to each other. So where the technology isn't, in the absence of the technology, if we can have more strengthened partnership, at least we can be informed with what police is doing, what customs is doing, what immigration is doing, and we can come together and sort of have a discussion so that we can be more vigilant. So like I said, it's one thing to say what we don't have and harp on that, but there are other things that I believe that we can do, and we can strengthen our, for example, I'm on a WhatsApp chat with chief immigration officers from around the region, and we talk about critical things that are happening in each of our respective destinations. And these things are helpful. These things are good to know. Right across, we see what's taking place right across in the U.S. Virgin Islands with the federal building attack and all of that. So it's closer to home than we think. And I think that we have to have a serious, I want to stress, I know we're stressed for time, but I need to stress, we have to have a serious discussion about immigration. We cannot continue to law enforcement, yes, but immigration and the issues and the impact that it's having on us as a territory, we must have a serious dialogue about it sooner rather than later.
Well, that's we hope that will be sooner. We're going to certainly make provisions for you to have it here. How are you managing in terms of monitoring law enforcement, as you say, where time is expired, people are overstaying, people are sneaking in through the window. You got
the back door.
The back door. You have human trafficking issues. How are we managing with those real critical issues?
Correct. We're trying to do more in those areas. We have a surveillance unit, and we have some very well-trained persons, experienced persons that we have in that particular area, and we're doing more site inspections. We want to go out and do more job site inspections and so forth to really get us a better appreciation of what is happening on the ground. I think we have a very good team at the ports of entry. I mean, the team, I get calls all the time, the team, I got stopped at the airport, and it says to me that the immigration at the ports, they're doing their jobs. And it makes me, sometimes people call and they try to, get by and get through and so forth, but they're keen at the ports. If you think that you can just come and walk through the ports, that is not a walk in the park, Cromwell, I'm telling you.
You're making a mistake.
You're making a mistake. So I'm very happy that the team at the ports are vigilant. We're going to be doing more internal inspections and job site inspections. We're going to want to hold employers accountable for a lot of what is taking place in the territory. The other thing I want to emphasize to persons, you have a lot of people coming, and I've been a victim of this. I've traveled abroad and ended up at the port of entry and not have certain documents and so forth. Listen, it's our responsibility to know whether you're national or non-national. And when you're traveling to a country, it's important that you know what the rules and the regulations are.
And walk with the documents.
And have the proper documents. And it's you know, and at some point we have to stand firm on our policies and our laws and our regulations, but too often people come in this, I didn't know. And ignorance is not an excuse.
Please find out before you come.
We have to find out what the requirements are for a territory before you come, whether it's to visit or to work. I had to learn the hard way. I went to the UK one time and they sent me back because I didn't have the right documents, and it made me more aware and more vigilant. And sometimes when we take those firm positions, it helps to educate, but we also want to do, I said the 3 E's was efficiency, education, and enforcement. We have to do a better job of educating. Hence why I'm here tonight, and hence why I'm going to be trying to do more in this area of education and informing the public about our policies and procedures. We have a responsibility. I've accepted that, and we're going to do better in that area. And then enforcement, we have to enforce. We have to enforce. We can't continue
slack.
We can't slack. We can't put our country at risk. While we have a responsibility for law enforcement and border security, and we understand the economic side of it, we understand our role in that, but we have to enforce our regulations.
Well, I have to say, you certainly seem to be enjoying your job.
Yes.
And you certainly seem to be a nice fit.
Okay.
You know, you look like
I'll take your word for it.
You look like a real nice fit in the immigration department. You know, I just see you in the immigration department, and so I'm really happy to have you on. And of course, you're gonna come back anytime you want.
Okay.
You know, so just let me know. We're gonna make the space, make the time, and we'll talk about what you need to discuss before you come, so that we'll allot the proper time for you to be able to get the job done. Thanks for coming by. Good to see you.
Thank you, Cromwell. It's always a pleasure being here, and I look forward to having more discussions about the issues facing immigration.
Absolutely. Yes, we're going to take a break, and we come back with our Director of Trade, Investment Promotion, and Consumer Affairs, Mrs. Carrier Christopher. That's going to be another interesting discussion. Entrepreneurial Week and business seminars coming up from April 3rd to the 7th. And there's a whole lot going to be going on. Just keep it locked right here to Spotlight. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited and CTL Home Center, the best products for the lowest prices, period.